The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. Lisa sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her leg bouncing nervously as she watched the clock tick away the minutes. She'd been waiting for almost an hour, and with each passing second, her anxiety grew stronger. When the nurse finally called her name, Lisa's heart jumped into her throat. She followed the woman down a long hallway, past rooms filled with other patients, some with scarves wrapped around their heads, others looking tired and pale. She tried not to stare, tried not to think about what that might mean for her. The doctor's office was smaller than she expected. Dr. Peterson sat behind his desk, a manila folder open in front of him. He was an older man with kind eyes, but today those eyes carried a weight that made Lisa's stomach turn. She knew before he even opened his mouth. You always know, don't you? Something deep inside just tells you when the news is going to be bad. I'm sorry, Lisa, he began, and those 3 words were enough to make her world tilt sideways. The biopsy came back positive. It's breast cancer, stage 3 cancer. The word hung in the air like smoke. Lisa heard herself ask questions, heard the doctor's voice explaining things like lymph nodes and metastasis and treatment options, but it all sounded distant, like she was underwater. Her hands gripped the armrests of the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. We need to start treatment as soon as possible, Dr. Peterson continued. You'll need chemotherapy, aggressive chemotherapy. 6 months of treatment, maybe more depending on how your body responds. Lisa nodded, still not quite processing everything. She was only 34 years old. She ate salads. She went to yoga classes when she could afford them. How could this be happening? Then came the part that would haunt her for weeks to come. Dr. Peterson slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is an estimate of the treatment costs. Your insurance will cover some of it, but... Lisa looked down at the paper. The numbers swam before her eyes. $8,000 per month. After insurance. For 6 months. She did the math quickly in her head, even though she didn't want to. $48,000. It might as well have been $48 million. I don't have that kind of money, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Dr. Peterson's expression softened with sympathy. He'd clearly had this conversation before. There are payment plans, financial assistance programs. We can have someone from our billing department talk to you about options. Options. Lisa almost laughed, but she was afraid if she started, she wouldn't be able to stop. What options did she have? She was an artist, a painter who sold watercolors at weekend markets and craft fairs. On good months, she made enough to cover her rent and groceries. On bad months, she picked up extra shifts at the small bookstore downtown where she worked part-time. She had no savings account to speak of. No rich relatives, no trust fund or inheritance waiting in the wings. She'd grown up in a working-class family in Ohio, put herself through community college, and had been scraping by ever since, choosing to pursue her passion for art over a stable corporate job. The irony wasn't lost on her. All those times people had told her to get a real job, to think about her future, to be practical. She'd always smiled and said she was following her dreams. Now those dreams felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. That evening, Lisa sat in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the stack of medical papers on her kitchen table. Her cat, an orange tabby named Vincent, rubbed against her legs, sensing something was wrong. She picked him up and held him close, feeling the vibration of his purr against her chest. The apartment was small but filled with her artwork. Canvases leaned against every available wall. Her easel stood by the window, catching the last rays of afternoon sunlight. Paint tubes and brushes cluttered her work table. This was her life, her whole world contained in 400 square feet. She thought about calling her mom, but what would she say? Her parents had retired to Florida, living on Social Security and her dad's small pension. They'd help if they could, she knew that, but they barely had enough for themselves. She couldn't burden them with this. Lisa pulled out her laptop and started researching. Cancer treatment costs, financial assistance for chemotherapy, medical crowdfunding. The more she read, the more hopeless she felt. Even with payment plans, even with assistance programs, the numbers were staggering. And treatment needed to start soon. Every day she waited was a day the cancer could spread. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions that had no good answers. How was she supposed to work while going through chemotherapy? How would she pay rent if she couldn't work? What happened if she chose to forego treatment because she couldn't afford it? The next morning, Lisa did the only thing she knew how to do. She painted. She set up her easel by the window, squeezed fresh paint onto her palette, and picked up her brush. Her hands shook at first, but as she began to work, something shifted inside her. The fear didn't go away, but it became something else, something she could channel onto the canvas. She painted a sunrise, brilliant oranges and pinks spreading across a deep blue sky. She painted it with an intensity she'd never felt before, every brushstroke deliberate and necessary. Because maybe she wouldn't see 1,000 more sunrises, maybe she had to make each one count. The painting took her all morning. When she finally stepped back to look at it, she realized her face was wet with tears. But there was something else too. The painting was good, really good, maybe the best work she'd ever done. Over the next few days, Lisa painted like her life depended on it. Because in a way it did. She painted gardens and oceans and mountains. She painted her mother's hands and her father's smile. She painted Vincent sleeping in a patch of sunlight. Each canvas became a repository for everything she was feeling. All the fear and love and desperate hope bottled up inside her. On Saturday, she loaded up her car with paintings and drove to the farmer's market like she did every weekend. She set up her small booth, arranged her work on the display racks, and sat down on her folding chair. The October air was cold, and she wrapped her thin jacket tighter around herself. People walked by, some stopping to look, most just passing through. She sold one small painting for $30. It wasn't nearly enough, not even close, but she smiled at the customer, thanked them, and wrapped the painting carefully in brown paper. She had no idea that in just a few days, everything was about to change. The bills started arriving within days. First one envelope, then another, then a whole stack that Lisa couldn't bring herself to open. They sat on her kitchen counter like a ticking time bomb, each one a reminder of the impossible situation she was facing. She'd called the hospital's financial services department 3 times already. Each conversation ended the same way. Yes, there were payment plans. Yes, there were assistance programs. But even with all of that, she'd still need to come up with thousands of dollars up front just to start treatment. The woman on the phone had been kind but firm. Without payment arrangements in place, they couldn't schedule her chemotherapy. Lisa tried to stay calm, tried to be rational about it all. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, panic would grip her chest like a vice. She'd lie there in the dark, doing math in her head over and over. If she sold 10 paintings a week at $50 each, that would be $2,000 a month. But she'd never sold 10 paintings in a week. On a good week, she sold 3. The mornings were hardest. She'd wake up, and for just a few seconds, everything would be normal. Then reality would crash back in, and she'd have to force herself out of bed. Some days she wanted to just stay there, pull the covers over her head, and pretend none of this was happening. But then she'd look over at her easel by the window, at the canvas waiting there, and something inside her would shift. If she only had so much time left, she wasn't going to spend it hiding. She was going to paint, and so she did. Every single day. Her work started changing in ways she didn't fully understand. Before the diagnosis, she'd painted pretty things. Landscapes that would look nice in someone's living room. Flowers that matched people's curtains. Safe, pleasant art that sold reasonably well at craft fairs. But now something raw and honest was pouring out of her. She painted a woman standing alone on a cliff, facing an enormous wave. She painted hands reaching toward light. She painted a bird with broken wings that was somehow still flying. The colors were more intense, the emotions more visible. It was like she'd spent years painting with a filter on, and suddenly that filter was gone. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked on her door one afternoon. The older woman lived across the hall and often checked in on Lisa, bringing her homemade dumplings and asking about her art. Today, she held a small basket of oranges. "You look too thin," Mrs. Chen said, pushing the basket into Lisa's hands. "Eat," Lisa tried to smile. "Thank you. I'm okay, really." But Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes missed nothing. She looked past Lisa into the apartment, at the dozens of new paintings covering every surface. "You're working a lot." "Just keeping busy," Lisa said. Mrs. Chen studied her for a long moment, and Lisa wondered if somehow this woman who barely spoke English could see right through her. Finally, Mrs. Chen patted her arm. "Whatever storm you're in, it will pass. Everything passes." After she left, Lisa stood there holding the basket of oranges, feeling tears prick at her eyes. If only it were that simple. If only she could just wait for the storm to pass. But this storm required money she didn't have and time she might not have either. The following Saturday at the farmer's market was colder than usual. Lisa had forgotten her gloves and her fingers were going numb as she arranged her paintings. She'd brought more work than usual this week, including some of her newer, more emotional pieces. Part of her worried they were too intense, too personal. Who wanted to buy sadness? But she needed to try. She'd already missed one shift at the bookstore because she'd been too exhausted. The manager had been understanding, but Lisa knew she couldn't keep calling out. She needed every penny she could get. The market was busy that morning. Families browsed the vegetable stands. Couples sipped coffee from the local roaster's booth. Kids ran between the aisles laughing. Lisa watched them all, feeling strangely separate from the normal flow of life happening around her. These people were thinking about what to make for dinner, whether they needed more apples if they should buy that artisan cheese. They weren't thinking about treatment schedules and medical bills and mortality. She sold a small painting of a sunset to a young couple. $40, then nothing for over an hour. She sat on her folding chair, trying not to think about how cold she was, trying not to calculate how many more paintings she'd need to sell to make even a tiny dent in what she owed. That's when she noticed the woman with the camera. She was maybe in her 40s, Asian, wearing a professional-looking jacket and carrying an expensive camera around her neck. She'd been walking slowly through the market, stopping occasionally to take photos of the vendors, the produce, the people. Now she was standing about 10 feet away from Lisa's booth, looking at the paintings. Lisa sat up straighter, putting on her best vendor smile even though her face felt frozen. The woman moved closer, studying each painting carefully. She lingered on the one with the bird, the one with broken wings still flying. "These are beautiful," the woman said finally, turning to Lisa. "Did you paint all of these?" "Yes," Lisa replied. "All originals." The woman introduced herself as Rachel, a freelance photographer working on a project about small businesses and local artists. She asked if she could take some photos of the booth for her documentation. Lisa agreed, though she felt self-conscious suddenly, aware of how tired she probably looked, how thin her jacket was against the cold. Rachel asked questions as she worked. How long had Lisa been painting? What inspired her work? Did she sell online or just at markets? Lisa answered, keeping her responses light and professional. But Rachel kept looking at her with this odd expression, like she was seeing something Lisa wasn't saying. "This one," Rachel said, pointing to the painting of the woman facing the wave. "There's something really powerful about it. It feels personal." Lisa looked at the painting, at the tiny figure standing alone against that massive force of nature. "I guess all art is personal in some way," she said carefully. Rachel nodded, but she was still watching Lisa with that same searching look. "Can I ask you something? And you can absolutely say no if it's too personal." Lisa's heart started beating faster. "Okay, are you all right? I don't mean to pry, but you just seem like you're carrying something heavy." And maybe it was because she'd been holding it all in for so long. Maybe it was because this stranger with kind eyes seemed genuinely concerned. Or maybe Lisa was just tired of pretending everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. Whatever the reason, she found herself talking. Not everything, not all the details, but enough. The diagnosis. The costs. The impossible choice between the art that kept her sane and the treatment that might keep her alive. Rachel listened without interrupting, her camera hanging forgotten around her neck. When Lisa finished wiping at her eyes with her cold hands, Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Can I take your photo?" she asked finally. "With your paintings?" Lisa almost said no. She didn't want to be someone's charity case, didn't want pity, but something in Rachel's voice stopped her. This wasn't pity. This was something else. "Okay," she said. Rachel positioned her carefully, standing next to the painting of the bird with broken wings. "Just be natural," she said. "You don't have to smile." Lisa stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, the cold wind blowing her hair across her face. She heard the click of the camera shutter once, twice, 3 times. She had no idea that this single moment, this one photograph, was about to change everything. Lisa didn't think much about the photograph after that day. Rachel had thanked her, given her a business card, and promised to send her copies of the photos. Then she'd disappeared into the crowd at the farmer's market, and Lisa had gone back to trying to stay warm and sell her paintings. The rest of that weekend was a blur. She sold 2 more small pieces, Went home exhausted and spent Sunday in bed, too tired to even pick up a paintbrush. The fatigue was getting worse. She knew it even though she tried to ignore it. Some mornings just getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. On Monday, she dragged herself to work at the bookstore. Her manager, Tom, took one look at her and told her to go home. She'd protested weakly, but he insisted. "You look like you're about to fall over," he said gently. "Go rest. We'll manage." Lisa went home and slept for 14 hours straight. When she woke up Tuesday afternoon, her phone was buzzing. Not just once or twice, but constantly. Notifications kept popping up on the screen, one after another. Confused and still groggy, she picked it up. 37 text messages. 62 emails. Missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. What on earth was happening? The first text was from her college roommate, someone she hadn't talked to in almost 2 years. "Oh my God, I just saw your story. Are you okay? Why didn't you tell me?" "What story?" Lisa's heart started pounding as she scrolled through more messages. Friends, distant relatives, people she barely knew, all saying variations of the same thing. "I saw your photo. I read your story. I had no idea you were going through this." With shaking hands, Lisa opened her email. Near the top was a message from Rachel, the photographer from the market. The subject line read, "I hope this is okay." Lisa clicked it open. "Dear Lisa," the email began. "I want you to know I asked your permission before doing anything, but I felt compelled to share your story. I'm part of a photojournalism project about people facing impossible choices in our healthcare system. Your story, your strength, and your art moved me deeply. I posted the photo essay last night. I hope you don't mind. Here's the link." Lisa clicked the link with trembling fingers. The page loaded slowly, and then there she was. The photograph Rachel had taken showed Lisa standing beside her painting of the bird with broken wings. The wind had caught her hair, and her eyes held this expression that was part defiance, part exhaustion, part hope. She looked small and vulnerable, but somehow strong at the same time. Below the photo was the caption, "This is Lisa. She's 34 years old. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 3 weeks ago. Her treatment will cost nearly $50,000 after insurance. She's an artist who sells paintings at weekend markets to survive. She can't afford her chemotherapy, but she keeps painting anyway, because giving up on her art would be like giving up on life itself." Lisa sat on her bed, staring at the screen. The post had been shared over 15,000 times. 15,000. The comment section went on for pages. Strangers from all over the country, all over the world, were reading about her life, her struggle, her impossible situation. "This is heartbreaking. Our system is broken. I lost my sister to cancer. She couldn't afford treatment either. This has to change. Where can we buy her paintings? Someone start a fundraiser for this woman." Lisa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Part of her felt exposed, like her most private pain had been put on display for the world to see. But another part felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. She felt seen. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this fight. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello? Hi, is this Lisa? The artist from the photo essay?" The voice was male, deep, nervous. "Yes, this is Lisa." "Oh, good. My name is Kevin Patterson. I'm calling from Seattle. I saw your story online and I wanted to talk to you about your paintings." Lisa's mind raced. "Okay, the one in the photo. The bird with the broken wings. Is it for sale?" "Yes," Lisa said automatically. "It's $400. She'd priced it higher than her usual work because of how much time and emotion she'd poured into it. "I'll take it," Kevin said immediately. "And I'd like to see what else you have. Do you have a website or somewhere I can look at your other work?" Lisa gave him her Instagram handle and her email, her hands shaking so badly she could barely type. After they hung up, she just sat there stunned. $400. That was nearly half her rent. But the calls didn't stop. Over the next few hours, her phone rang constantly. People wanted to buy paintings. People wanted to know her story. A local news station wanted to interview her. A woman from a cancer support organization offered to help her navigate financial assistance programs. By evening, Lisa had sold 8 paintings, 8. More than she usually sold in 2 months. Her head was spinning. She kept checking her phone. Sure, this was some kind of mistake, some weird dream she'd wake up from. Around 7, she got an email that made her stop breathing. It was from someone named David Chen. The subject line said, "Regarding your artwork and your treatment." Lisa opened it, her heart hammering. "Dear Lisa, my name is David Chen. I'm a software developer in Seattle, and I came across your story tonight through a friend who shared the photo essay. I have to tell you something. 5 years ago, I lost my younger sister to ovarian cancer. Her name was Michelle. She was 31 years old and she loved to draw. She had this tattoo on her shoulder of a phoenix rising from ashes, her symbol of hope during treatment. When I saw your painting of the bird with broken wings, it took my breath away. It reminded me so much of Michelle, of her fight, of her spirit. I should have done more to help her with the costs. I had the money, but I didn't realize how bad things were until it was too late. I've lived with that regret every single day since. I don't want that to happen to someone else. I don't want another artist, another fighter, another person like my sister to lose their battle because of money. So I'd like to make you an offer. I want to buy all of your paintings. Every single one. And I want to pay whatever amount you need for your treatment. Please let me know what that number is. This isn't charity. This is me honoring my sister's memory. This is me doing what I should have done 5 years ago. Please don't refuse. Your art deserves to be seen and you deserve to live to create more of it. Please reply when you can. David." Lisa read the email 3 times, then 4, then 5. She couldn't process what she was seeing. This couldn't be real. People didn't just offer to pay for a stranger's cancer treatment. That didn't happen in real life. But the email was there with a real phone number and a real signature. With shaking hands, she hit reply. "Dear David, I don't know what to say. I don't even know if this is real. But if it is, I need about $48,000 for 6 months of chemotherapy. I can't believe I'm even writing this. I can't believe any of this is happening. If you're serious, please call me. I need to hear your voice to know this isn't some cruel joke. Thank you for seeing my art. Thank you for seeing me, Lisa." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she sat there on her bed in her tiny apartment, surrounded by her paintings and her cat and the life she'd built. And she let herself cry. Not sad tears this time, something else entirely. Hope. For the first time in 3 weeks, she felt hope. Lisa's phone rang 20 minutes later. She grabbed it so fast she almost dropped it. "Hello? Hi, Lisa, this is David." His voice was warm, genuine, real. "I just got your email." They talked for over an hour. David told her about his sister Michelle, about how she'd fought for 2 years before the cancer finally won, about how she'd kept a sketchbook even during her final days in the hospital, drawing flowers and birds and anything beautiful she could think of, about how he'd found that sketchbook after she died and realized he'd never truly understood how much her art meant to her. "She never told us how bad the medical bills were," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "She didn't want us to worry. By the time we figured it out, she'd already stopped some of her treatments because she couldn't afford them. She told the doctor she was doing fine, but she wasn't. She was choosing between medicine and rent." Lisa felt tears running down her face. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," David said firmly. "Just let me help you, please. I've done well for myself. I sold my company 3 years ago. I have more money than I know what to do with. And what good is any of it if I can't help someone like you? Someone like Michelle?" "I don't know what to say," Lisa whispered. "Say yes. Say you'll let me wire you the money for your treatment. Say you'll keep painting. That's all I need to hear." That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking this was all some elaborate dream, that she'd wake up and none of it would be real. But her phone kept buzzing with messages, and her email kept filling up with people wanting to buy her art, wanting to help, wanting to share her story. Rachel, the photographer, had also started a crowdfunding page without telling her. By morning, it had raised $12,000. $12,000 from complete strangers who'd seen her photo and decided her life was worth fighting for. A woman in Boston who was a cancer nurse sent $50 and a note that said, "I see patients like you every day. Keep fighting." A retired teacher in Florida sent $100. "I'm on a fixed income," her note read, "but I remember what it's like to struggle. I wish I could give more." A teenager sent $15 with a message, "This is my birthday money. My mom had cancer too. She beat it. You can beat it too." Lisa read every single message, every single note. She sat at her kitchen table with tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the kindness of people she'd never met. People who owed her nothing but gave anyway. David was true to his word. Within 2 days, he'd wired $48,000 to her account. Lisa stared at her phone screen, at the bank notification showing the transfer. She refreshed the app 3 times to make sure it was real. It was real. She called Dr. Peterson's office immediately. "I can start treatment," she told the receptionist, her voice shaking. "I can pay for it. When can we schedule the first session?" The first chemotherapy appointment was scheduled for the following Monday. Lisa was terrified, but for the first time since her diagnosis, the fear wasn't about money. It was just about the cancer itself, about the poison they'd pump into her veins, about whether it would work. Normal fears. The kind of fears every cancer patient had, not the added burden of wondering if she could afford to survive. The weekend before her treatment, something unexpected happened. A small art gallery in the city reached out. They'd seen the viral photo essay and wanted to do an exhibition of her work. A real exhibition, in a real gallery, with an opening reception and everything. "We want to call it Breaking Wings," the gallery owner told her over the phone. "Your story, your art, it's powerful. People need to see it," Lisa agreed, still feeling like she was floating through a dream. The gallery owner asked if she had enough pieces for a show. Lisa looked around her tiny apartment at the dozens of paintings covering every surface, all the work she'd created in the weeks since her diagnosis. "Yes," she said, "I have enough." She spent the next few days preparing. David had bought several of her paintings, but she still had plenty more. She photographed each one, wrote descriptions, tried to organize them in a way that told a story. Her story, Mrs. Chen came over to help her wrap and transport the paintings. The older woman didn't say much, just quietly assisted with packing materials and bubble wrap. But as they worked, she put her hand on Lisa's shoulder. "I knew you were sick," she said softly. "I could see it. But I also saw you fighting. That's why I brought you oranges. My grandmother used to say oranges bring good luck and health." Lisa hugged her. This neighbor who'd shown her kindness without asking for anything in return. The night before her first chemotherapy session, Lisa couldn't sleep. She got up and went to her easel by the window. The city lights twinkled outside, and somewhere out there were thousands of people who'd helped save her life. People she'd never meet, never thank in person, but who'd seen her story and decided to act. She picked up her brush and started painting. This time she painted faces. Not specific faces, but representations. The nurse in Boston, the retired teacher, the teenager who sent birthday money, David and his sister Michelle, Rachel who'd taken the photograph that changed everything. All of them, connected by invisible threads of kindness and compassion. She painted through the night, and by morning she'd created something new. A canvas filled with faces, all looking toward a single point of light in the center. She titled it, "Strangers." Monday morning arrived too soon. Lisa woke up early, showered, and dressed in comfortable clothes like the nurse had instructed. She packed a bag with books and her sketch pad, things to keep her occupied during the long hours of treatment. Tom from the bookstore had offered to drive her, but Lisa wanted to go alone for this first session. She needed to face it herself, to know she could do this. David had texted her that morning, "You've got this." Michelle would be so proud to know her memory helped save someone. The cancer center was busy when she arrived. She checked in at the front desk, and the receptionist smiled at her. "Lisa, we've been expecting you. Come on back." The chemotherapy room was large and bright, with big windows letting in natural light. Other patients sat in recliners, IV bags hanging beside them, some sleeping, some reading, some just staring into space. Lisa felt her courage falter for a moment. A nurse appeared, young and kind-faced. "Lisa, I'm Jenny. I'll be taking care of you today." She led Lisa to a recliner by the window. "First time is always the scariest, but you're going to do great." As Jenny prepped her IV, Lisa looked out the window at the world continuing its normal pace outside. Cars driving by, people walking their dogs, life going on, indifferent to the battles being fought in this room. "Okay," Jenny said. "Here we go. You might feel a little cold at first." Lisa felt the needle go in, felt the tape being secured. Then Jenny started the drip, and Lisa watched the clear liquid begin its slow journey from the bag into her veins. This was it, the beginning of the fight. But unlike 3 weeks ago, when she'd sat in Dr. Peterson's office feeling hopeless and alone, today she was surrounded by an invisible army of support. Every person who donated, every stranger who'd bought a painting, every message of encouragement, David and his sister's memory, Rachel and her camera, Mrs. Chen and her oranges. All of them were here with her. She pulled out her sketch pad and began to draw. A bird with broken wings learning to fly again. She drew while the medicine flowed into her body, while other patients dozed or watched television, while Jenny checked her vitals every 30 minutes. 4 hours later, when the bag was finally empty and Jenny removed the IV, Lisa felt exhausted but strangely triumphant. She'd done it. 1 session down. Many more to go. As she walked out of the cancer center into the afternoon sunshine, her phone buzzed. A text from David. How did it go? Lisa smiled and typed back, I'm still standing. And I'm still painting. That was all that mattered. She was still here, still fighting, still creating, and she wasn't doing it alone. The next 6 months were the hardest of Lisa's life. Chemotherapy was brutal in ways she hadn't imagined. The nausea hit her in waves, sometimes so bad she couldn't get out of bed for days. Her hair started falling out in clumps after the second treatment. She'd stand in the shower, watching it swirl down the drain and try not to cry. Food tasted like metal. Her body ached constantly. Some days, even lifting a paintbrush felt impossible. But she kept going. Every other Monday, she'd show up at the cancer center, let Jenny hook her up to the IV, and spend 4 hours watching poison drip into her veins. And every time, she'd bring her sketch pad. She called the series the Phoenix Sessions. Each drawing documented something from her treatment. The IV pole, Jenny's kind hands preparing the needle, the view from her recliner. Other patients she met along the way. An older man named Harold who always wore funny hats. A young mother who did crossword puzzles during her sessions. A teenage boy who played games on his phone and tried to act like he wasn't scared. They became a strange sort of family, this group of people connected by illness and treatment schedules. They'd compare side effects, share tips for dealing with nausea, celebrate each other's progress. When Harold finished his last treatment, they all cheered. When the young mother's scans came back clear, Lisa cried happy tears with her. The art exhibition happened between her 3rd and 4th treatments. Lisa had debated canceling it because she felt so terrible, but the gallery owner insisted she didn't need to do anything except show up. They'd handle everything else. The opening night was surreal. Lisa wore a wig that never quite felt right and a dress that hung loose on her thinning frame. But when she walked into the gallery and saw her paintings on the walls, professionally lit and beautifully displayed, something shifted in her chest. There were her birds with broken wings, her faces of strangers, her storms and waves and moments of light breaking through darkness, all of it, her pain and fear and hope, transformed into something that other people could see and feel and understand. The gallery was packed. Some people had come from the viral photo essay, curious to meet the artist behind the story. Others were local art lovers who'd heard about the exhibition. David had flown in from Seattle, and when Lisa saw him, she hugged him like an old friend even though they'd only talked on the phone before. Michelle would have loved this, he said, looking at the paintings with tears in his eyes. She would have loved you. Rachel was there too, her camera around her neck documenting the whole evening. Mrs. Chen came with a group of her friends, all of them dressed up and proud. Tom from the bookstore brought the entire staff. Even some of Lisa's fellow chemo patients showed up, Harold wearing his most outrageous hat, but the most surprising visitor was Dr. Peterson. He found Lisa in the crowd and pulled her aside. I had to come see this, he said. In 20 years of oncology, I've seen a lot of patients, but I've never seen anything quite like what you've done. You took something terrifying and turned it into something beautiful. I didn't really have a choice, Lisa said. It was paint or give up. And I'm not very good at giving up, he smiled. No, you're not. Your latest scans looked good, by the way. The tumors are shrinking. Lisa felt her knees go weak. She'd been so focused on just getting through each treatment that she hadn't let herself think too much about whether it was actually working. Really? Really? Keep doing what you're doing. It's working. The exhibition sold almost every painting. The money went into a fund Lisa had set up, inspired by David and all the strangers who'd helped her. She called it Breaking Wings, and it would help other artists facing medical crises, because she knew now that she wasn't the only one. There were so many people out there struggling alone, too proud or too scared to ask for help. By her 6th and final chemotherapy session, Lisa was exhausted but hopeful. The scans had continued to improve. Dr. Peterson was cautiously optimistic. The worst might be behind her. Jenny removed the IV for the last time and gave her a long hug. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." Lisa looked around the chemotherapy room one last time. Harold had already finished his treatment and was in remission. The young mother was doing well. The teenage boy still had a few more sessions to go, but he was fighting hard. This room that had seemed so terrifying 6 months ago now felt almost sacred, a place where battles were fought and sometimes won. 3 weeks after her last treatment, Lisa went back to Dr. Peterson's office for follow-up scans. She sat in the same waiting room where this whole nightmare had started, but everything felt different now. She wasn't alone anymore. She had her phone filled with messages from people checking on her. She had David, who called every week just to talk. She had Rachel, who'd become a real friend. She had Mrs. Chen and her oranges. She had a community of people who'd seen her at her lowest and helped lift her back up. When Dr. Peterson called her into his office, she was ready for whatever he'd say. But when he smiled, really smiled, she knew before he even spoke. "The tumors are gone," he said. "Completely gone. You're in remission, Lisa." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only sit there as the word sank in. Remission. She'd made it. She'd actually made it. That evening, Lisa went home to her tiny apartment. Vincent greeted her at the door like always, rubbing against her legs and demanding dinner. She fed him, then stood by the window looking out at the city lights. She thought about where she'd been 6 months ago, sitting in this same spot, convinced her life was over, unable to see any way forward. She'd been so focused on the impossibility of it all that she couldn't imagine what might happen if she just kept going, if she just kept painting, kept fighting, kept showing up. But she had kept going, and something incredible had happened. Not because of anything special she'd done, but because people had seen her struggling and decided to help. Strangers who owed her nothing had given her everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. "I heard the news. Michelle is dancing somewhere, I know it." Lisa smiled through her tears and typed back, "Thank you. For everything. For Michelle, for me, for believing that art and life are both worth fighting for." She set down her phone and looked at her easel. It had been 3 weeks since she'd painted anything. The treatments had taken everything out of her, and she'd needed time to rest, to recover, to just breathe. But now, standing here in her apartment with remission fresh in her mind and hope blooming in her chest, she felt the familiar pull, that need to create, to capture this moment, this feeling, this miracle of still being alive. She set up a fresh canvas and picked up her brush. This time she didn't paint broken wings or storms or darkness. She painted light. Pure golden light spreading across the canvas like sunrise. She painted hands reaching not in desperation but in connection, in support, in love. She painted faces of strangers becoming friends, becoming family, becoming the invisible threads that hold us all together when everything else falls apart. She painted until her hand cramped and her eyes grew tired. She painted until the canvas glowed with all the hope and gratitude she couldn't fit into words. And when she finally stepped back to look at what she'd created, she knew exactly what to call it. Still here. Because that was the truth. The simple and profound truth of it all. Despite everything, despite the odds, despite the fear and the pain and the impossible bills, she was still here. Still breathing, still creating, still fighting, still hoping, and that was enough. That was everything. Vincent jumped up on the windowsill beside her, purring softly. Lisa scratched behind his ears and looked out at the city, at all the lit windows holding all the stories of all the people she'd never meet. How many of them were fighting their own battles right now? How many needed help but didn't know how to ask? She made a silent promise to them, to herself, to everyone who'd helped her survive. She would keep painting. She would keep sharing her story. She would keep proving that art matters, that life matters, that we all matter to each other in ways we don't always see. Tomorrow, she'd call the Breaking Wings Fund and see how many people they'd been able to help so far. She'd reach out to Rachel about documenting more stories like hers. She'd thank David again for being the stranger who became her guardian angel. She'd bring Mrs. Chen some flowers. But tonight, she just stood by her window with her cat and her paintings and her second chance at life, grateful beyond measure for every single person who'd seen her drowning and thrown her a rope. She was still here. And she was going to make it count.